but also from the perspective of, you know, the global dimension of this, positive consequences for us. Do we still take them, or do we sort of rush to take full advantage of that window, you know, while
Sure.
we all wait to be inundated or scorched, whichever way it works?
Sure.
And how do we find the balance between local interests and global compulsions?
Sure. Thanks. Thank you, Shubir, for inviting me, Vikram. It's a great pleasure to be here. My day job is as a professor of economics at the Delhi School of Economics, and I developed and teach 4 courses. One is on the environmental economics, one is on resource economics, developed a course on climate change economics, and also environment and development. So when Ashok was talking about the details can be worked out by the professors and the bureaucrats, to use a phrase from Jairam's book, I'm one of the Sherpas. You said I was a Sherpa along with Rakesh and so on. So I am a Sherpa. I'm quite happy to be one because I do believe that the devil lies in the details. So my day job, as I said, is an economist. By night, I try to be a thinker and a columnist, not as successful as Shubir, but still. So I'll try to address the point that Shubir asked me to do. But I must first, since this discussion is pegged around this book, and I really did enjoy reading it, I would like to spend a few minutes commenting on the book and then address the points that Shubir asked me to. I would very simply say, and of course I must also give a little historical anecdote, that I first met Jairam in the office of Prannoy Roy when he was economic advisor. You won't remember it. You were, yeah, you were additional economic advisor. Oh, I'm flattered you remember that. So, and that time Shankaracharya and Prannoy were the economic advisors. Bimal was the chief economic advisor. VP Singh was the minister. My job was to track inflation. I was fresh out of D school, and inflation was at around 10%. So I did first meet you then, and you're very right that you were an economic administrator, but then you became a spokesperson for the party, and then the new avatar as the, so it's been phenomenal. And this truly is an awesome book. I mean, not only is it tremendously well written, which you would expect anyway, but it is a very interesting book because the first for a minister to actually tell a personal story and also tell a story about the challenges that we face, as others have mentioned. And I certainly think, Jairam, that an abridged version of this in, say, Hindi and so on would be really, really useful for our current generation, because this is a tome, you know, and it is heavy going at times. But I think this is the first for a minister. I would certainly advocate that you should be translating this. Today's discussion, of course, is transcending the book per se. And when I was reading this book, and particularly the first chapter, which is the running thread, it struck me that this man did in 25 months. What if he had his full tenure? all the events, all the things that you started, and of course you got the cabinet rank and you went to rural development. But I would, since I'm an academic and I can speak my mind, I think that it was very unfortunate that you couldn't finish your tenure, because the things that you had started could have really fructified. And as you said in the book, that when you met the Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, he gave you 3 briefs that introduce more transparency and accountability, balance out this growth versus environment imperatives, and then do something more proactive about climate change. And I would say, without exaggerating, that since I'm an academic and I'm given to giving grades, I would say you got an A on all of those. But then there were certain areas that could have been done more if you had more time. So I'm not going to recount all the things that were done. So I will do say that, you know, I mean, the one thing I would latch on to, because Partha Dasgupta is also a very close friend and mentor of mine, that was an absolutely interesting piece of work. It hasn't been quite well captured in this discussion. What Partha Dasgupta says is that income is not the measure, but it's inclusive wealth. So your GDP may be growing up, but your inclusive wealth means physical wealth, physical capital, human capital, and natural capital may be depleting. So in that sense, it's not sustainable. And he also critiques the Sen index of HDI, which we also love. But, you know, I mean, this is my day job, so I'm not going to bore you with all of that. But I would sort of straight away jump into the green issue challenges that you faced and that you tried to reconcile. The no-go was a great idea. I think where more could have been done in the go-no-go is that when you said 70-30. So, we say India has the world's third largest coal reserves. And I heard Montek say this, he came to D school and he said that, then we are kidding ourselves. If certain reserves of ours, unfortunately, are contiguous or rather coterminous with the most forest-rich areas. So if the minerals are above the forest and forests are inhabited by the tribals who are also very poor, then you have this kind of conundrum. And the way to then say is that, look, this is not touchable. I mean, think of these forests as sacred groves or what do you want to call them, and say, okay, so we have zero 0.7 of whatever we call our reserves. And as an economist, to me, the simple point is if coal is priced at world market rates, our coal is not that good. So whatever the world price is, the only add-on to that would be the transport cost. And remember, the coal we are going to bring in from Australia and all will be much higher quality. So you can't just compare it ton per ton. So quality adjusted world markets, if we didn't have this really, I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm going to be very blunt, this Coal India Limited, which is not a very well-run organization, you could price coal and say, look, this is the opportunity cost of not pulling out that coal. And we put a price tag on it. So there I would say that it doesn't have to be case by case. It doesn't have to be nuanced. You can simply take a call that this many tons of coal is not touchable by us. This is the foregone opportunity cost. And I dare say it's not that high given the kind of coal you have. And you can have shore-based plants of thermal and steel like the Vizag plant and so on, and that is a possible way out. The second way out, as you have said in one of your speeches to the International Association for the Study of Common Pool Resources, is the Ostrom paradigm, which is that if you clearly define property rights, and not private but collectively owned, then you also get around this conundrum, because right now we have the state as owner, and you really, as you were trying to do, in some of your experiments with giving stuff to the Gram Sabhas. The Ostrom paradigm is well known, so I have, my time is short, so I'm not going to go into the details. But I would really say that the green problems are largely because of really the minerals, and largely coal, to some extent iron ore, and not using the Ostrom paradigm of governing the local commons once you do that. Because I am coming on this from a libertarian perspective, and the libertarian view would be a very property right driven view, and doesn't mean private or state, it means the appropriate level of property rights, and we can discuss this more. On the brown issues, I think it was a great idea for you to do the, what was it, the cumulative environmental pollution index. Yeah, I'm just coming to that, the CEPI, and that was great. The study by Duflo and all was fantastic. I may though mention that when I came back and I was in the World Bank, we did a market task force for market-based instruments, but institutional memory in the government is short. But the point is that that experiment should have been taken further, and I'm sure you would have done it had you been there. Coming to climate change, I think, you see, the problem with Jairam was that one day he's sanctioning the nuclear plant, so people are beating up upon it. One day he's saying, don't do the coal. So, and as he said, that if you're displeasing everyone, you're doing something right. So I think on the whole, that was the basic problem. And the energy needs were important. So he said, let's do nuclear, or at least you allowed that plant to come through. And then people said, oh, but you're anti-environment. And then if you stop the coal, then you see, anti-growth. So I can have full empathy. And on the climate change, I think on the institutional framework, what was really incredible was the INCA, the Indian Network for Climate Change Assessment, a sort of an Indian version of the IPCC. I'm a consumer of INCA reports. I know all the people have done it. And again, I think that that was an excellent network, and I do hope it survives, whether if Subodh Sharma is left or whoever. But I think that's, fantastic. So on the climate change, Jairam, you could also take a precautionary principle that, look, even if we know that climate is going to be uncertain, but we don't want to mess with it, like the brinjal. The problem with climate change is a global public good. So if we use the precautionary principle to sort of, hamper ourselves or tie our hands, then we're in trouble. So what Jairam was doing in the climate change agenda was that he used a very dirty word, which was called the M word, the mitigation word. So Jairam started talking about emissions, right? And then, man, all hell broke loose, because he diverged from our stated position, which he rightly says was a kind of a naysayer. So India had become a naysayer, and the rich countries had successfully divided the G77 into the least developed and so on, and the least developed would tell India that while you develop, we perish. So I think he's tried to do that. He tried to articulate sort of, that as a responsible member of the international community of nations, we should have certain mitigation goals. He did not agree to a peaking year, if I remember. So he did that. I think there again, what could have been done more, had you chosen to ask me, I'm just kidding, is assetize the global commons and use a similar method like the MBIs. When you assetize the global commons and we take our fair share of the global commons vis-a-vis atmosphere through international cap and trade system, we are sitting with an asset. We have monetized this, which is fine. So then we are not going with a begging bowl to the Green Climate Fund, okay, give us $1 billion here, $1 billion there. And I wrote about this right after the Copenhagen thing in the Times of India. It was picked up by one of the joint secretaries, but it didn't go far. But I think on the climate change, that is really the way to go forward. We assetize it, we carve up the commons on some principles of equity, per capita, and so on. We get our share of these, and then we sit on the table and we trade. And we, of course, don't understand very well how these prices work. That's the Sherpa work, and people can do that. So I think the PP principle applied, the precautionary principle applied to climate change works well, but it's not a local good, so we should do that. And I really think that there are so many other things in the book. One thing I would really fault from an administrative perspective is, Jairam mentions the first two secretaries of this ministry were T.N. Khushu and S.Z. Qasim, both were eminent scientists. There's no reason why a bureaucrat should be heading this ministry year after year, because this is a very serious subject. And this is a larger question of administrative reform, which I certainly would fault the UPA government for not tackling. There was no political constituency there. You have to get these babus in line. You have to professionalize these ministries. And for that matter, the CPCB, committee after committee has told you that the CPCB works without a full-time chairman. Right now, an additional secretary of the ministry holds additional charge. Why don't you get good professionals into these entities? So that question I'll leave Jairam to answer. But the revision of the NAQS, the NGT, the National Environment Appraisal and Monitoring Authority, based on the EPA, which didn't see through. Again, how much can a guy do in 25 months? But I think this is a great book. It's a must read. And I think the issues that he has raised are things that are very important. He hasn't presented a paradigm. The paradigm is still to emerge. So we wait for your next book then.